June 1943. The waters off the coast of Japan shimmered under the summer sun, concealing secrets beneath the waves that could change the balance of naval power. In the wake of countless Allied patrols and sonar-equipped destroyers, Japanese naval strategists faced a stark reality: conventional submarines were becoming increasingly vulnerable. In the dimly lit planning rooms of the Imperial Japanese Navy, engineers and scientists huddled over blueprints, charts, and technical drawings. Their mission was audacious: design a submarine that could move silently through the water, invisible to sonar and undetectable to enemy ships. Every propeller blade, every hull contour, every engine noise had to be reconsidered. The project became known internally as the Silent Submarine Initiative, a top-secret effort that combined cutting-edge physics with engineering ingenuity. Captain Hiroshi Tanaka, a veteran submariner turned engineer, oversaw much of the early work. He understood the tactical advantage that silence could provide: a submarine that could infiltrate enemy harbors undetected, evade depth charges, and strike without warning could cripple supply lines and naval operations. "If the enemy cannot hear us," he often said to his team, "then we do not exist to them." And in war, being unseen is being invincible. Early experiments involved modifications to conventional submarines: mufflers for diesel engines, redesigned propellers to minimize cavitation, and specialized coatings to reduce underwater noise. But the technology was not yet perfected. Test runs in Tokyo Bay often ended in frustration, as engineers struggled to balance speed, maneuverability, and stealth. Yet, the Japanese scientists persisted, driven by the knowledge that a breakthrough could tip the scales in the Pacific War. By mid-1943, whispers of the project had begun to circulate among high-ranking officers. Japan's leadership understood that controlling the seas required more than brute force; it required innovation, deception, and the ability to strike where the enemy least expected. And in hidden docks along the coast, the first prototypes of a silent submarine were beginning to take shape, setting the stage for a race that would eventually draw the attention of American engineers thousands of miles away. The first Japanese prototypes were modest by modern standards but revolutionary for their time. Engineers experimented with new hull shapes, borrowing concepts from marine biology, studying dolphins and tuna to understand how nature minimized drag and noise underwater. Each curve of the submarine's hull was calculated to reduce turbulence and cavitation, the tiny bubbles that could give away a vessel's position to enemy sonar. In small coastal test facilities, divers and engineers would observe the wake of experimental submarines, noting every bubble, every ripple, every sound emitted. Propellers were redesigned with fewer blades, twisted angles, and specialized tips to reduce the telltale noise of spinning metal. The engines themselves were modified. Diesel motors were insulated with rubber and suspended on shock absorbers to prevent vibrations from reaching the hull. These experiments were painstaking and fraught with failure. Early prototypes moved slower than conventional subs, and minor design flaws caused instability in rough waters. Yet the Japanese were undeterred. The Navy provided limited resources and the highest level of secrecy, ensuring that only a handful of engineers and officers even knew the full extent of the program. By late 1943, the first operational prototype had emerged from the docks. Though imperfect, it could move through the water at a speed of 8 knots with a noise signature barely detectable by standard sonar of the time. Tests were conducted at night to avoid observation, with officers noting each sound reading and underwater ripple. It was a small but critical step in the race for silent underwater warfare, a foundation that would later inspire the Americans to take the concept even further. Captain Hiroshi Tanaka and his team of engineers were at the heart of Japan's silent submarine program. Tanaka, a former frontline submariner, had first-hand experience of the deadly cat-and-mouse game beneath the Pacific waves. He had seen entire crews lost to sonar-equipped destroyers, and he was determined that the next generation of submarines would be ghosts in the water. Working alongside him were acoustics specialists, naval architects, and metallurgists, each recruited for a specific skill. Dr. Masaru Ito, an expert in vibration damping, developed methods to isolate engine components from the hull, preventing even the smallest hum from traveling into the surrounding water. Naval architect Kenji Sato redesigned the submarine's hull with streamlined precision, focusing on the placement of rudders, conning towers, and propellers to minimize turbulence. The engineers worked tirelessly, often in dimly lit shipyards, surrounded by blueprints, scale models, and experimental machinery. Each prototype was meticulously measured and adjusted. A minor misalignment of the propeller could compromise months of work. They even simulated sonar detection tests by having divers measure acoustic signatures, pushing the boundaries of what was technologically possible for 1940s Japan. Despite the secrecy, the stakes were clear to everyone involved. A silent submarine could infiltrate enemy harbors, gather intelligence, and attack convoys with near impunity. For Tanaka and his colleagues, the project was not just an engineering challenge, it was a mission that could alter the course of the Pacific War. Every sleepless night, every failed prototype, and every painstaking adjustment brought them one step closer to creating a vessel that, if perfected, could move through the ocean like a shadow, undetectable and lethal. By early 1944, Japan's silent submarine prototypes had reached a stage where limited sea trials could be conducted. Along the rugged coastline of northern Japan, hidden coves and fjords became testing grounds. Crews would navigate the experimental vessels under strict conditions, measuring noise levels, speed, and maneuverability. Every creak, vibration, or bubble was recorded, analyzed, and refined. Despite these advances, the submarines were far from flawless. Their engines were underpowered, limiting speed, and extended operations revealed weaknesses in hull integrity under rough seas. Crews often had to endure long hours in confined, poorly ventilated spaces, testing not just the technology but human endurance. The program's leaders realized that while the concept was sound, Japan lacked the industrial resources and materials to fully perfect the design before Allied advances intensified. Nevertheless, intelligence reports began to circulate within the Imperial Navy. The concept of a silent hunter beneath the waves promised a potential game-changer in submarine warfare. Commanders imagined fleets of stealthy subs striking undetected at Allied convoys, cutting supply lines, and forcing the Allies to rethink their naval strategies. Unbeknownst to Japan, Allied reconnaissance had begun picking up subtle signs of these experimental vessels. Photographs of restricted dockyards, reports from spies, and intercepted communications hinted at a new underwater threat. It was only a matter of time before the Americans would learn of the silent submarine concept, setting the stage for a technological leap that would transform naval warfare in the Pacific. American intelligence first caught wind of Japan's silent submarine program through a combination of code-breaking, espionage, and reconnaissance flights over the Japanese coastline. Analysts at Station HYPO in Hawaii and the Office of Naval Intelligence in Washington pored over intercepted communications and photographs, piecing together fragments of information that hinted at a revolutionary underwater weapon. Reports described unusual hull shapes, restricted dockyard activity, and new propeller designs. Naval officers recognized the significance immediately. A submarine that could move silently would bypass traditional sonar detection, threatening the lifelines of supply convoys and challenging Allied naval supremacy. Engineers and intelligence specialists began to sketch possible designs, reverse engineering what the Japanese might be developing. By mid-1944, the Americans had assembled a specialized task force of naval architects, acoustics experts, and submarine veterans to analyze the threat. They examined captured Japanese documents, interviewed prisoners of war, and even conducted tests on captured vessels to understand how noise traveled through water. Every detail mattered: hull curvature, propeller blade design, engine vibration, all of it had to be studied to anticipate and counter the potential danger. The stage was set for a technological race. America had the industrial capacity and resources that Japan lacked, and intelligence suggested that if the silent submarine concept could be perfected, it could tilt the balance in the Pacific. What the Americans were about to achieve would surpass the Japanese prototypes, creating a new era in submarine warfare and proving that sometimes knowing your enemy's secrets is as powerful as the weapons themselves. In the shipyards of Connecticut and California, American engineers and naval architects began transforming intelligence into reality. Drawing inspiration from the intercepted blueprints, photographs, and reports of Japanese prototypes, they designed a submarine that incorporated silent running technologies on an unprecedented scale. Hull designs were meticulously crafted to reduce hydrodynamic noise, with smooth, continuous curves and specialized coatings to absorb sonar pulses. Propellers were reimagined. Fewer blades, twisted angles, and precisely calculated tips minimized cavitation. Engines were mounted on vibration-damping platforms, insulated with rubber and other materials to prevent even the faintest mechanical hum from escaping into the water. Acoustics specialists played a crucial role. They developed sound isolation techniques for pumps, compressors, and auxiliary machinery. Speakers and hydrophones were used in controlled experiments to measure and fine-tune the vessel's noise signature. Even the paint used on the hull was selected for its sonar-absorbing properties, a combination of engineering and material science that Japan had only begun to explore. By late 1944, the first American prototype of the silent submarine was launched. Trials were conducted in bays and offshore waters, monitored by engineers and naval officers who recorded every decibel, every ripple, and every vibration. The results were promising. For the first time, a submarine could move stealthily, undetectable by conventional sonar of the period. This achievement marked the beginning of a transformation in undersea warfare, one that would give the Allies a decisive edge in the final stages of the Pacific conflict. The testing phase of the American silent submarine was exhaustive. Engineers, naval officers, and acoustic specialists worked side by side, measuring every aspect of the vessel's performance. Sensors recorded vibrations, hydrophones captured underwater noise, and model simulations tested hydrodynamic efficiency under various speeds and sea conditions. Crews trained in new operational protocols designed to maintain stealth. Every action on board, from engine throttling to ballast adjustments, was choreographed to minimize sound. Even routine maintenance procedures were modified to avoid creating detectable vibrations. Officers learned to read the submarine, understanding how subtle changes in speed, angle, or depth could affect acoustic signatures. During early trials, the prototype performed beyond expectations. It glided through the water silently, evading detection from sonar-equipped destroyers and patrol craft in controlled exercises. Naval strategists realized that with these advancements, submarines could infiltrate heavily defended enemy waters, strike at critical targets, and return without revealing their position. The success of the testing program was a triumph of intelligence, engineering, and practical experience. America had taken a concept first imagined by Japanese scientists and transformed it into a fully operational weapon. The silent submarine would not only redefine undersea combat but also demonstrate the power of combining espionage with industrial capability and scientific innovation. By early 1945, the first fully operational silent submarines were ready for deployment in the Pacific theater. Their missions were planned with precision: reconnaissance of Japanese-held islands, interception of supply convoys, and surprise strikes on heavily defended harbors. Commanders recognized that stealth, rather than brute force, was now the key advantage under the sea. Crews embarked on their maiden operational patrols with a mixture of anticipation and caution. Training from the trials had prepared them for the delicate balance required to maintain silence. Engine power, propeller pitch, and hull angle all had to be carefully managed. Even minor mistakes could compromise stealth and endanger the vessel. Early missions validated the effectiveness of the design. Submarines infiltrated enemy waters undetected, observed shipping lanes, and gathered intelligence that was previously unattainable. Japanese anti-submarine measures, which had been effective against conventional subs, failed to detect these silent vessels. The success of these operations not only disrupted enemy logistics but also gave Allied planners confidence in their ability to dominate the undersea battlefield. The silent submarine had become a tangible manifestation of intelligence, engineering, and operational excellence. What began as a Japanese experiment, combined with American ingenuity and industrial might, had resulted in a weapon capable of changing the dynamics of naval warfare in the Pacific forever. The impact of the silent submarine on the Pacific conflict was profound. Convoys that had once sailed with relative safety now faced an invisible threat, forcing Japanese commanders to divert resources to patrols, sonar installations, and anti-submarine measures. Ships were delayed, supply lines disrupted, and morale weakened, all without a single conventional naval battle taking place. Allied planners began integrating the silent submarines into coordinated operations. Intelligence gathered by these vessels informed air strikes, amphibious landings, and naval engagements. Commanders could act on real-time reconnaissance, striking where the enemy was weakest and avoiding heavily defended zones. The psychological effect was equally significant. The enemy never knew where the next silent strike might appear, creating uncertainty and hesitation across the Japanese fleet. Veteran submariners who had participated in conventional attacks now recognized the silent submarine as a game-changer. The combination of stealth, intelligence, and technology allowed fewer crews to achieve what previously required entire fleets. The lessons learned from these operations would influence submarine tactics and naval strategy for decades, establishing principles that endured long after the war ended. By the summer of 1945, the silent submarine had not only fulfilled its intended purpose but had reshaped the strategic landscape of the Pacific, proving that ingenuity and stealth could rival even the most heavily armed adversaries. After Japan's surrender in August 1945, the full significance of the silent submarine became clear. Analysts and historians reviewed operational reports, patrol logs, and crew testimonies, recognizing that these vessels had played a decisive role in undermining Japanese naval operations. What had once been a secret project, born from espionage and innovation, was now acknowledged as a pivotal factor in the Allies' victory in the Pacific. The silent submarines demonstrated how technological advancement, combined with intelligence gathering and rigorous testing, could redefine warfare. They became a blueprint for post-war naval strategy, influencing submarine design and tactics for generations. Lessons learned from the American adaptation of Japanese concepts informed Cold War developments and the evolution of modern stealth technology. For the men who built, tested, and commanded these vessels, there was quiet pride. They had transformed the enemy's idea into an operational reality, achieving strategic results without the loss of lives that a traditional naval engagement might have caused. In retrospect, the silent submarine stands as a testament to the power of ingenuity, the importance of intelligence, and the lasting impact of combining science with strategy. History remembered the battles and the fleets, but the silent submarine quietly changed the rules of the game, proving that sometimes the most powerful weapons are the ones the enemy never hears coming.